In the vast silence of space, far from Earth, a research vessel named Explorer's Hope drifted near an uncharted moon. The ship was home to a small team of scientists and engineers, all working together on a mission to study the unknown. Among them were Daniel Carter, a biologist with a deep curiosity about life in all its forms, and Laura Bennett, an engineer who loved solving problems and fixing things. Together they made a good team, though their personalities were quite different. Daniel was calm and thoughtful, while Laura was quick-witted and practical. On this particular day, the crew was conducting routine scans of the moon's surface. The moon was rocky and barren, with jagged cliffs and deep crevices that seemed to stretch endlessly. It didn't look like a place where life could exist, but Daniel had learned long ago that life often found ways to survive in the most unexpected places. As he monitored the data coming in from the scanners, something unusual caught his eye. A faint heat signature, barely noticeable, appeared on the screen. It was coming from one of the deeper crevices. Daniel leaned closer to the monitor, his brow furrowing as he studied the readings. "Laura," he called out, his voice steady but curious. "Can you come take a look at this?" Laura, who was busy tinkering with a piece of equipment nearby, glanced up. "What is it now?" she asked, wiping her hands on a cloth before walking over. She wasn't annoyed, just used to Daniel's habit of finding oddities in the data. He pointed to the screen. "There's a heat signature here. It's weak, but it's definitely there. Could be nothing, or..." He trailed off, leaving the thought unfinished. Laura squinted at the monitor. "Or it could be something worth checking out," she finished for him. She sighed, setting the cloth down. "All right, let's suit up. But if this turns out to be another rock with mysterious properties, I'm blaming you." The two quickly prepared for an excursion, donning their spacesuits and gathering the necessary tools. They climbed into a small rover designed for surface exploration and set off toward the location of the heat signature. The ride was bumpy, the uneven terrain making the vehicle jolt and sway as they navigated the rocky landscape. Neither of them spoke much during the journey, each lost in their own thoughts. Daniel's mind raced with possibilities, while Laura focused on driving carefully, avoiding the larger rocks and craters. When they finally reached the crevice, they parked the rover and stepped out. The area was eerily quiet, the only sound being the soft hum of their suits' oxygen systems. Daniel led the way, shining a flashlight into the dark opening. The beam of light revealed jagged walls and shadows that danced with every movement. He moved slowly, cautiously, until he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. "Laura," he whispered, his voice filled with wonder. "Look." At the base of the crevice, partially hidden by loose rocks, was a small creature. Its body shimmered with a silvery fur that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Its large, luminous eyes blinked up at them, wide with fear or curiosity. It was hard to tell. A thin, glowing blue tail curled around its body, completing the picture of an alien being unlike anything they had ever seen. For a moment, neither of them moved. The creature looked fragile, almost delicate, its tiny chest rising and falling rapidly as if it were struggling to breathe. Daniel crouched down, extending a gloved hand slowly. "It's okay," he murmured, though he knew the creature couldn't understand him. "We're not going to hurt you." Laura stood back, watching silently. She wasn't sure what to make of the situation. Part of her wanted to grab Daniel and drag him back to the rover, while another part felt a strange pull toward the little creature. There was something about it, something almost familiar. Despite its alien appearance, it reminded her of a puppy she'd once owned as a child, abandoned and scared but full of potential for love and trust. After a few tense moments, the creature stopped trembling and tilted its head, studying Daniel with those enormous eyes. It didn't retreat or lash out, which Daniel took as a good sign. Carefully, he scooped it up, cradling it gently in his arms. The creature let out a soft whimper, but it didn't resist. If anything, it seemed to relax slightly, pressing its small body closer to him. "We can't just leave it here," Daniel said firmly, looking up at Laura. It's clearly been abandoned and it won't survive much longer on its own. Laura hesitated, glancing around the desolate landscape. She knew he was right. Whatever this creature was, it didn't belong in this harsh environment. Still, bringing it aboard the ship came with risks. What if it was dangerous? What if it carried some kind of disease or parasite? But as she looked at the tiny being nestled in Daniel's arms, her doubts began to fade. "All right," she said finally, nodding. "Let's take it back to the ship, but if this goes sideways, I'm holding you responsible." Daniel smiled, relieved. "Deal." The return trip to the rover was slower, as Daniel held the creature protectively, shielding it from any sudden movements. Once inside the vehicle, he wrapped it in a thermal blanket to keep it warm. The creature's glowing tail flickered weakly, but it seemed to settle down, curling into a ball as if it finally felt safe. Back on the Explorer's Hope, the rest of the crew gathered around to see what Daniel and Laura had brought back. Some were intrigued, others cautious, and a few outright skeptical. Greg Harris, the mission commander, crossed his arms and frowned. "You realize this could jeopardize the entire mission," he said sternly. "We don't know what that thing is or what it's capable of." Daniel met his gaze calmly. "I understand your concerns, Greg, but we can't ignore the fact that it's alive, and it needs help. We'll take every precaution to ensure it doesn't pose a threat." Rachel Myers, the ship's medic, stepped forward. "Let me examine it," she offered. "If it's injured or sick, I can at least stabilize it until we figure out what to do next." With Rachel's assurance, the crew reluctantly agreed to let the creature stay, for now. Daniel worked tirelessly to create a makeshift habitat for it, consulting with Rachel to ensure its basic needs were met. Laura pitched in by modifying equipment to monitor its health. Slowly, the crew began to warm up to the little alien. Its playful antics and endearing behavior won over even the skeptics, but not everyone was convinced. Greg continued to voice his concerns, warning that the creature might interfere with their work. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, setting the stage for challenges yet to come. Despite the uncertainty, one thing was clear. The discovery of the alien puppy had already begun to change the dynamics of the crew and their mission in ways no one could have anticipated. After the initial excitement of discovering the alien puppy, life aboard the Explorer's Hope settled into a new rhythm. The crew had named the creature Luma, inspired by its glowing fur and tail. Daniel Carter took charge of caring for Luma, treating it almost like a pet despite its otherworldly origins. He spent hours observing its behavior, noting how it reacted to different stimuli. Laura Bennett helped by modifying equipment to better monitor Luma's health, ensuring they could quickly address any issues that arose. At first, the crew was divided about keeping Luma on board. Some, like Rachel Myers, the ship's medic, were fascinated by the opportunity to study such a unique being. Others, however, weren't so sure. Greg Harris, the mission commander, remained skeptical. "We're here to study the moon, not play babysitter to some alien stray," he said during one of their meetings. His tone was firm, but there was no mistaking the frustration behind his words. Daniel tried to reassure him. "I understand your concerns, Greg, but Luma isn't interfering with our work. If anything, it's helping us learn more about this moon and its potential for supporting life." Greg didn't look convinced, but he didn't push the issue further, at least, not right away. For now, the crew agreed to keep Luma aboard while they figured out what to do next. As days passed, the little alien began to win over even the most reluctant members of the team. Its playful nature made it hard to resist. Luma loved chasing beams of light that reflected off shiny surfaces, often darting around the ship in bursts of energy. Sometimes it would curl up near someone working at a console, its glowing tail flickering softly as if to say thank you. Rachel grew especially fond of Luma. She spent her free time examining the creature, documenting everything she observed. One evening, as she sat cross-legged on the floor of the lab, Luma nestled comfortably in her lap. She gently stroked its silvery fur, marveling at how soft it felt. "You're quite the mystery, aren't you?" she murmured, smiling when Luma tilted its head as if trying to understand her. Despite the growing affection for Luma, not everyone shared the same enthusiasm. Greg still worried about the risks. He voiced his concerns during another meeting, pointing out that they had no idea what Luma truly was or where it came from. What if it's dangerous? What if it carries some kind of alien disease we can't detect? We're putting ourselves and the mission at risk by keeping it here. His words sparked a heated debate among the crew. Some sided with Greg, agreeing that caution was necessary. Others defended Luma, arguing that it was harmless and deserved a chance. Daniel listened patiently, waiting for the discussion to calm down before speaking. Look, I get it. We don't know everything about Luma, and yes, there are risks. But isn't that why we're out here? To explore, to learn, to take chances. We can't let fear stop us from doing what's right. His argument struck a chord with many, including Laura. Though she'd initially been hesitant about bringing Luma aboard, she'd grown attached to the little creature. Watching it interact with the crew reminded her of the importance of compassion, even in the vastness of space. Daniel's right, she said, looking at Greg. We can't just abandon it, not after everything we've seen. Greg sighed, rubbing his temples. He knew he was outnumbered, but he couldn't shake his unease. Fine, he relented. But if anything happens, if Luma causes even the slightest problem, we send it back. Understood? The crew nodded in agreement, though privately most of them doubted they'd ever be able to part with Luma. It had become a part of their daily lives, brightening the monotony of their mission with its antics and warmth. As the days turned into weeks, Luma continued to adapt to life aboard the ship. It seemed to thrive under the care of the crew, growing stronger and more active. Daniel noticed subtle changes in its behavior. At times, Luma appeared to respond to sounds or movements in ways that suggested intelligence beyond instinct. Once, while Daniel was working on his laptop, Luma nudged his arm insistently until he paid attention. When he finally looked up, the creature pointed its glowing tail toward the screen as if trying to communicate. This is incredible, Daniel muttered, jotting down notes. He called Laura over to share his observations. Together, they brainstormed ways to test Luma's abilities. They set up simple experiments using lights, sounds, and objects to see how it reacted. Each trial revealed something new about the creature's perception and cognition. It wasn't just intelligent, it was highly perceptive, capable of understanding patterns and anticipating actions. Their findings only deepened the bond between the crew and Luma. Even Greg found himself softening slightly, though he still kept his distance. One day, as he walked through the main corridor, he paused to watch Luma playing with a small ball of light projected onto the wall. The scene was oddly heartwarming, and for a brief moment, Greg allowed himself to smile. Perhaps the creature wasn't as much of a liability as he'd feared. However, not everything went smoothly. Adjusting to Luma's presence brought challenges the crew hadn't anticipated. The ship's systems occasionally malfunctioned without warning, causing minor disruptions. Equipment would shut down unexpectedly, or strange noises would echo through the corridors late at night. Suspicion naturally fell on Luma, given its mysterious nature. Greg seized on these incidents to argue his case again. See? This is exactly what I was talking about. That thing is causing problems. He gestured toward a flickering control panel. We need to figure out what's going on before it puts us all in danger. Daniel refused to believe Luma was responsible. There has to be another explanation, he insisted. Luma hasn't shown any signs of aggression or malice. Let's investigate properly before jumping to conclusions. To prove his point, Daniel teamed up with Laura to run diagnostics on the affected systems. They pored over data logs, searching for clues. Meanwhile, Rachel kept a close eye on Luma, monitoring its vitals and behavior for anything unusual. The process was tedious, but the trio remained determined to uncover the truth. Their efforts paid off when they discovered something surprising. Luma emitted low-frequency vibrations, almost imperceptible to human senses. These vibrations resonated with certain metals used in the ship's construction, causing interference with nearby electronics. It wasn't intentional, just a side effect of the creature's physiology. Armed with this knowledge, Laura devised a solution. She modified the ship's shielding to block the vibrations, effectively preventing further malfunctions. The crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. grateful that the issue had been resolved. Greg, though still wary, acknowledged their success. "All right," he admitted grudgingly. "Maybe I was wrong about it being dangerous. But that doesn't mean we should lower our guard." Life aboard the Explorer's Hope returned to normal, or as normal as it could be with an alien puppy in their midst. Luma continued to charm the crew with its playful personality and curious nature. It had gone from being an unexpected discovery to a cherished companion, bridging the gap between humans and the unknown. Yet, as peaceful as things seemed, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Luma's story than met: the eye. Somewhere within its glowing fur and luminous eyes lay secrets waiting to be uncovered, secrets that might change everything they thought they knew about the universe and themselves. As the days passed, Luma's presence aboard the Explorer's Hope became more than just a curiosity. It sparked a sense of purpose. The crew had grown fond of the alien puppy, but they also recognized that it was unlike anything they'd ever encountered. Its glowing fur and mysterious behavior hinted at a deeper story, one that Daniel Carter and Laura Bennett were determined to uncover. One evening, after finishing their daily tasks, Daniel sat on the floor of the lab with Luma curled up beside him. He was flipping through pages of notes he'd made about the creature's behavior, trying to piece together patterns. Luma suddenly stood up, its glowing tail flickering brighter than usual. It walked over to a nearby console and nudged it gently with its nose. The screen lit up, displaying a grid of symbols that none of them had seen before. Daniel froze, staring at the screen. "Laura," he called out, his voice tinged with excitement. "You need to see this." Laura rushed in, her eyes widening, as she took in the sight. "What is that?" she asked, pointing to the symbols. I think it's coming from Luma," Daniel replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Look." He gestured toward the glowing markings on Luma's fur, which seemed to pulse faintly in sync with the symbols on the screen. Laura crouched down, studying the glowing patterns. "It's like a language," she said slowly. "But how is it doing this?" They decided to run tests to understand what was happening. Using sensors, they mapped the glowing symbols on Luma's body and compared them to the ones on the screen. To their amazement, the patterns matched perfectly. It was clear now. Luma wasn't just an ordinary creature. It was capable of communicating, though the exact method remained a mystery. The discovery sent ripples through the crew. Rachel Myers, who had already grown attached to Luma, joined Daniel and Laura in their efforts to decode the symbols. Together, they worked tirelessly, analyzing every detail. Greg Harris, however, remained cautious. "This is fascinating, sure," he said during one of their meetings. "But we can't lose sight of our mission. We're here to study the moon, not solve some cosmic puzzle." Daniel nodded, understanding Greg's concerns. "I know, but this could be connected to the moon. What if Luma came from there? What if those symbols hold clues about its origins?" Greg sighed, shaking his head. "All right, keep working on it, but don't let it distract us too much." Encouraged by Greg's reluctant approval, the team pressed on. They built a device to translate the glowing symbols, hoping to unlock their meaning. Progress was slow, but each breakthrough brought them closer to understanding Luma's past. One night, after hours of tinkering, Laura finally managed to stabilize the translation system. When they activated it, a holographic image appeared in the air, a swirling map of stars and planets. This has to be a star chart," Daniel said, his voice filled with awe. He traced the glowing lines with his finger, his mind racing. "It's showing coordinates. Maybe it's pointing to where Luma came from." Rachel leaned forward, her eyes scanning the map. "If we follow these coordinates, we might find answers, but it's risky. We don't know what or who we'll encounter." The crew debated whether to act on the information. Some, like Daniel and Laura, were eager to investigate further. Others, including Greg, were hesitant. "We don't have the resources for a side mission," Greg argued. "Our priority is still the moon. If we go chasing after some unknown location, we could jeopardize everything." Daniel understood the risks, but he couldn't ignore the opportunity. "Greg," Think about it. This could be our chance to make contact with another species. Isn't that worth the risk? After much discussion, the crew reached a compromise. They would continue their work on the moon while keeping the star chart in mind. If time allowed, they would explore the possibility of following the coordinates. For now, their focus remained on completing their primary mission. As they waited for the right moment to act, strange occurrences began happening aboard the ship. Equipment malfunctioned again despite Laura's earlier modifications. Flickering lights and eerie noises echoed through the corridors at night, leaving the crew uneasy. Suspicion once again fell on Luma, though no one wanted to believe it was responsible. Greg voiced his concerns during another meeting. These incidents are getting worse. We can't keep ignoring the possibility that Luma is causing them. Daniel defended the creature. It's not Luma. We've already proven that the vibrations aren't harmful. There's something else going on here. Determined to get to the bottom of the issue, Daniel and Laura conducted a thorough investigation. They reviewed data logs, checked the ship's systems, and even monitored Luma's behavior around the clock. What they discovered shocked them. The malfunctions weren't random. They were triggered by external signals. Someone or something was interfering with the explorer's hope. "We're being watched," Laura said grimly, showing the others the evidence. "Whoever it is, they're using technology far beyond ours." The revelation sent a chill through the crew. They realized they were no longer alone in this uncharted region of space. Whatever or whoever was out there knew about their presence, and it seemed to be targeting them specifically. Greg immediately ordered increased security measures. The crew double-checked all systems, fortified the ship's defenses, and prepared for the worst. Despite the tension, Luma remained calm, almost as if it sensed the danger but wasn't afraid. One night, as the crew gathered in the main cabin to discuss their next steps, Luma approached Daniel and placed its paw on his leg. Its glowing tail pulsed rhythmically, drawing everyone's attention. "What is it trying to tell us?" Rachel asked softly. Daniel knelt beside Luma, placing a hand on its back. "Maybe it knows something about whoever's out there. Maybe it's trying to help." Laura nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We should trust it. So far, Luma's instincts have been spot on." Taking a leap of faith, the crew decided to follow Luma's lead. They set course for the coordinates shown on the star chart, hoping to find answers. As the explorer's hope moved through the darkness of space, Luma stayed close to Daniel, its glowing fur casting a soft light in the dimly lit cabin. It was a comforting presence amidst the uncertainty. When they finally arrived at the destination, they found themselves facing a massive structure floating in the void. It was sleek and metallic, shaped like a dome with intricate designs etched into its surface. The sight was breathtaking, and the crew felt a mix of awe and apprehension. "This has to be it," Daniel said, his voice filled with wonder. "Luma's home." The crew prepared to investigate, knowing they were stepping into the unknown. They didn't know what awaited them inside the dome, but one thing was certain: Luma had led them here for a reason. Whether it was to reunite with its kind or to reveal a greater truth, the journey ahead promised to be both challenging and transformative. As they suited up and prepared to enter the structure, the crew couldn't help but feel a sense of unity. They had started as individuals with different goals and perspectives, but Luma had brought them together. Whatever happened next, they would face it as a team, with hope, courage, and the little alien puppy that had changed their lives forever. The crew of the Explorer's Hope stood outside the massive metallic dome, their hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. The structure loomed before them, its surface gleaming faintly in the dim light of the distant stars. It was clear, this place was ancient, but it still radiated an aura of power and mystery. Luma, the alien puppy, seemed unusually calm, its glowing tail flickering softly as if it recognized the significance of the moment. Daniel Carter took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "All right," he said, his voice firm despite the uncertainty swirling inside him. "Let's move carefully, we don't know what's waiting for us inside." Laura Bennett nodded, adjusting her helmet. Agreed. Stay alert, everyone. This could be dangerous. Greg Harris, the mission commander, gave one last warning before they entered. Remember, we're here to gather information, not to take unnecessary risks. If anything feels off, we pull back immediately. With that, the team stepped forward, guided by Luma. The creature walked ahead confidently, as if it knew exactly where to go. Its glowing fur cast a soft light on the ground, illuminating their path as they approached the entrance. When they reached the door, a smooth, seamless panel, it slid open silently, revealing a dark corridor beyond. The interior of the dome was unlike anything they had ever seen. The walls shimmered with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. Holographic projections floated in the air, displaying images of strange landscapes and unfamiliar beings. The air was cool and carried a faint hum, as though the structure itself was alive. As they ventured deeper, Rachel Myers couldn't help but marvel at the technology surrounding them. "This is incredible," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "It's so advanced, far beyond anything we've developed on Earth." Luma led them through winding passages until they reached a large chamber. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, glowing faintly with the same symbols they had seen on Luma's fur. The alien puppy trotted over to it, placing its paw gently on the surface. Instantly, the room came alive. Lights flared and holograms began to form, showing scenes from another time. The crew watched in silence as the story unfolded before their eyes. The holograms depicted a race of tall, slender beings with luminous skin and elongated limbs. They were explorers, traveling across galaxies in search of knowledge and connection. But something had gone wrong. A catastrophic event, a natural disaster or perhaps a war, had forced them to abandon their mission. Many of their young, including Luma, had been placed in stasis chambers hidden on moons and planets throughout the galaxy. The hope was that other intelligent species would find them and carry on their legacy. When the holograms faded, the crew stood in stunned silence. Daniel was the first to speak. "So, Luma isn't just an animal. It's part of an advanced civilization. These beings trusted us or whoever found it to protect it." Laura nodded, her mind racing. "This changes everything. We can't just leave Luma behind now. It's not just a stray. It's a link to another world." Greg frowned, clearly conflicted. "We have no idea what kind of responsibility this entails. What if we make things worse? What if we're not ready for this?" Rachel stepped forward, her tone gentle but firm. "Greg, think about it. This is a chance to connect with another species, to learn from them. Isn't that why we're out here? To explore, to understand, to grow?" Her words struck a chord with the others. Even Greg softened slightly, though his expression remained guarded. "Fine," he said after a long pause. "We'll figure out how to proceed. But we need to be careful. One wrong move and we could ruin any chance of peaceful contact." The team agreed, knowing the weight of their decision. They spent hours exploring the chamber, documenting everything they found. Laura worked tirelessly to interface with the dome systems, hoping to extract more information. Daniel stayed close to Luma, watching as the creature interacted with the environment. It was clear Luma felt a deep connection to this place, as if it were rediscovering a part of itself. As they prepared to leave, a sudden alarm blared through the dome. Red lights flashed and the hum in the air grew louder, almost deafening. The crew froze, unsure of what was happening. Luma let out a soft whimper, pressing closer to Daniel. "What's going on?" Laura shouted over the noise. Her hands flying over the controls. "I don't know," Daniel replied, scanning the room frantically. "But we need to get out of here." The team hurried back toward the entrance, Luma leading the way once again. Just as they reached the exit, the ground beneath them trembled violently. A section of the wall collapsed, blocking their path. Panic set in as dust filled the air, making it hard to see. "Stay together," Greg barked, taking charge. "We'll find another way out." They retraced their steps, searching for an alternate route. Luma seemed to sense their urgency, darting ahead and stopping near a narrow passageway. Daniel followed, trusting the creature's instincts. Sure enough, the passage led to a secondary exit, allowing them to escape just as the dome began to seal itself shut. Once outside, the crew caught their breath, shaken but unharmed. The dome's surface now appeared dull and lifeless, as if it had gone into hibernation. Luma sat quietly beside Daniel, its glowing tail dimming slightly. "Well, that was intense," Laura said, breaking the silence. She wiped sweat from her brow, her voice tinged with both relief and disbelief. Daniel knelt beside Luma, stroking its silvery fur. "You got us out of there," he said softly. "Thank you." Back aboard the Explorer's Hope, the crew gathered to discuss what they had learned. The revelation about Luma's origins had deepened their bond with the creature, but it also raised new questions. What did the future hold for Luma? And for them? Could humanity truly rise to the challenge of nurturing a connection with another species? Greg, though still cautious, acknowledged the importance of their discovery. "This is bigger than us," he admitted. "We need to report back to Earth and let them decide how to handle it." The others agreed, knowing they couldn't keep this secret to themselves. As they prepared to send a message home, Luma curled up in the corner of the lab, its glowing tail flickering faintly. It seemed content, as if it trusted the crew to do the right thing. For Daniel, Laura, Rachel, and even Greg, the journey had transformed them. They had started as scientists and engineers on a routine mission, but they had become something more, guardians of a fragile bond between two worlds. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew they would face them together, with Luma by their side. And so, the Explorer's Hope set course for Earth, carrying not only the crew's findings but also a tiny alien puppy whose presence had changed their lives forever. The road ahead would be uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity's encounter with Luma was just the beginning of a much larger story, one that held the promise of hope, understanding, and unity across the stars. The journey back to Earth was long, but the crew of the Explorer's Hope used the time wisely. They spent hours reviewing the data they had gathered from the mysterious dome, piecing together fragments of information about Luma and its species. Daniel Carter took charge of organizing their findings, his mind buzzing with questions. Laura Bennett worked alongside him, helping to decode the symbols and holograms they had recorded. Together, they tried to make sense of the advanced alien civilization that had entrusted their young to strangers in the vastness of space. Luma remained a constant presence, its glowing fur casting a soft light in the dimly lit lab, where the crew often gathered. The little alien seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, staying close to Daniel and occasionally nudging him as if offering encouragement. Rachel Myers marveled at how intuitive Luma was, noting how it seemed to comfort each member of the crew when tensions ran high. Even Greg Harris, who had been the most skeptical about keeping Luma aboard, found himself warming up to the creature. He didn't say much, but he no longer objected to its presence. As they neared Earth, the crew prepared to share their discovery with the world. They knew their report would spark widespread interest and possibly controversy. Humanity had dreamed of making contact with extraterrestrial life for centuries, but now that dream was becoming a reality, and it wasn't just any form of alien life. It was Luma, a being whose origins were tied to a race of explorers who had once roamed the stars. When the Explorer's Hope finally docked at an orbital station above Earth, the crew was greeted by a team of scientists, government officials, and journalists eager to hear their story. Daniel stepped forward to deliver the message, his voice steady despite the weight of what he was about to say. "We have discovered evidence of an advanced alien civilization," he began. "Their mission was one of exploration and connection, but something forced them to abandon their journey. Among their legacy are their young, beings like Luma, left behind in the hope that others would find them." He paused, gesturing toward Luma, who sat quietly beside him. The little alien's glowing fur shimmered under the lights, drawing gasps from the crowd. "This is Luma," Daniel continued. "It has become a part of our crew, and through it, we've learned that trust and compassion can bridge even the widest gaps between worlds." The announcement sent shockwaves across the globe. News outlets broadcast images of Luma, sparking debates about humanity's role in caring for alien life. Some people celebrated the discovery, seeing it as a sign of unity and progress. Others voiced concerns, questioning whether humans were ready for such responsibility. Despite the mixed reactions, one thing was certain. Luma had captured the Yao, hearts of millions. Back on Earth, the crew settled into a new routine. They were stationed at a research facility designed to study Luma and its species. Scientists from around the world joined the effort, bringing expertise in fields ranging from biology to linguistics. The goal was not only to learn more about Luma, but also to prepare for the possibility of encountering other members of its kind. Daniel and Laura threw themselves into the work, determined to honor the trust placed in them. They collaborated with linguists to refine the translation device, hoping to communicate directly with Luma. Slowly but surely, they made progress. One day, after weeks of trial and error, the device emitted a series of clicks and whistles. Luma perked up immediately, tilting its head as if listening intently. Then it responded with a soft chirp-like sound. "It worked," Laura exclaimed, her face lighting up with excitement. "We're actually talking to it." Daniel grinned, feeling a surge of pride. "Keep going. Let's see what else we can learn." Through these early conversations, they discovered fascinating details about Luma's species. The beings called themselves the Veilith, a name that roughly translated to children of the stars. They were peaceful explorers who valued knowledge and cooperation above all else. Their decision to leave their young in stasis chambers was born out of desperation. They hoped that other intelligent species would find them and carry on their mission of discovery. As word of these breakthroughs spread, public support for Luma grew stronger. People began referring to the alien puppy as a symbol of hope, a reminder that humanity could rise above its differences to embrace something greater than itself. Schools started teaching lessons about the Veilith, inspiring children to dream of a future where humans and aliens worked together. But not everyone shared this optimistic view. A small but vocal group argued that Luma should be returned to its original location, or at least kept isolated until more was known about its species. They feared that keeping Luma on Earth might attract unwanted attention from other alien races, potentially putting humanity in danger. Greg Harris found himself caught between these opposing viewpoints. On one hand, he understood the concerns about safety. On the other, he couldn't deny the positive impact Luma had already had on the crew and the world. When reporters pressed him for his opinion, he chose his words carefully. "Luma represents an opportunity for growth," he said during an interview. "Yes, there are risks involved, but there's also immense potential. If we handle this responsibly, we could take a step toward becoming better stewards of the universe." His measured response earned him praise from both sides, solidifying his role as a mediator in the ongoing debate. Meanwhile, Rachel Myers focused on ensuring Luma's well-being. She worked closely with veterinarians and biologists to create a nurturing environment for the alien puppy. Under her care, Luma thrived, growing stronger and more active with each passing day. One evening, as the sun set over the research facility, the crew gathered in the lab to reflect on how far they'd come. Luma sat in the center of the room, its glowing tail flickering softly. It had gone from being an abandoned creature on a barren moon to a beloved ambassador for an entire species. "You know," Daniel said, breaking the silence, "I never thought I'd end up here, caring for an alien puppy and learning about a whole new civilization." Laura smiled, leaning back in her chair. "Me neither, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Luma's changed us, for the better." Rachel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's funny how something so small can have such a big impact. Luma's taught us that kindness and curiosity can lead to amazing things." Even Greg cracked a smile, though he quickly masked it with his usual stoic demeanor. "Let's just hope we don't mess this up," he said gruffly, earning chuckles from the others. As they laughed and talked, none of them noticed the faint glow emanating from Luma's fur. The markings on its body pulsed rhythmically, almost as if it were sharing a message or perhaps a thank you. In that moment, surrounded by the people who had saved it, Luma seemed content. The road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging. There were still many unanswered questions about the Valeth and their fate, but for now, the crew allowed themselves to feel a sense of accomplishment. They had taken a leap of faith, choosing compassion over fear, and in doing so, they had forged a bond that transcended worlds. And as they looked at Luma, glowing softly in the fading light, they knew their journey was far from over. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a team, as protectors of a fragile but powerful connection between two species. For the first time in history, humanity had stepped into a larger story, one that held the promise of unity, understanding, and endless possibilities among the stars. Months passed, and the presence of Luma continued to shape humanity's understanding of the universe. The research facility where the crew worked became a hub of activity, drawing scientists, diplomats, and curious visitors from all over the world. People came not just to study Luma, but also to witness firsthand the bond that had formed between humans and an alien being. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the vastness of space, connections could be made. Daniel Carter spent most of his days working with linguists to deepen communication with Luma. Progress was slow but rewarding. Through a combination of sounds, gestures, and glowing symbols, they began to piece together fragments of Luma's thoughts and memories. One day, while experimenting with a new translation method, Daniel asked a question he'd been wondering about for months. "Luma, do you remember your family?" The room fell silent as everyone turned to watch. Luma tilted its head, its luminous eyes blinking slowly. Then, it let out a series of soft chirps and whistles. The translation device crackled before producing a response. "Family, far away. Sleep now." Rachel Myers, who was observing nearby, interpreted the message. "It sounds like it remembers them, but they're still in stasis, or maybe something else entirely." Laura Bennett nodded thoughtfully. Could there be more Valeth out there? Maybe others who survived? The possibility sent a ripple of excitement through the team. If there were other survivors, finding them could provide answers and perhaps even reunite Luma with its kind. But tracking down another group of Valeth would be a monumental challenge. For now, the focus remained on learning everything they could from Luma. As word of their progress spread, invitations poured in for the crew to share their story at conferences and summits. Daniel and Laura traveled frequently, presenting their findings to audiences eager to learn about the Valeth. Each presentation ended with images of Luma, whose playful antics and glowing fur had become iconic. People cheered, clapped, and sometimes even cried, moved by the idea that humanity wasn't alone in the universe. Back at the facility, life settled into a rhythm. Greg Harris took on a leadership role, coordinating efforts between researchers and government agencies. Though he still carried a cautious streak, he had softened significantly since their initial discovery. Watching Luma interact with the crew and seeing how much joy it brought to people around the world had changed him. He no longer saw the alien puppy as a risk, but as a bridge to a brighter future. One evening, after a long day of meetings, the crew gathered in the lab to unwind. Luma sat in the center of the room, its glowing tail flickering softly as it watched them. Daniel leaned back in his chair, a content smile on his face. "You know," he said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I never imagined my career would lead me here." Laura laughed, sipping her coffee. "Me neither. I signed up to fix broken equipment, not decode alien languages." Rachel chimed in, her tone warm. "And yet, here we are. Who would have thought an abandoned puppy could change so much?" Greg didn't say anything, but his slight nod suggested agreement. Even he seemed caught up in the moment, allowing himself a rare smile. Their peaceful evening was interrupted by an unexpected alert. A red light flashed on the control panel, accompanied by a low-pitched alarm. Everyone sprang into action, rushing to investigate. On one of the monitors, a series of coordinates appeared, pulsing faintly. They matched the star chart they had seen earlier, the same map that had led them to the dome. "What does this mean?" Laura asked, her voice tense. Daniel studied the screen closely. "It's coming from Luma's translator. It's like, it's trying to tell us something. Luma stood up, its glowing fur brightening as if responding to the signal. It walked over to the monitor, placing a paw on the screen. The coordinates zoomed in, focusing on a specific location deep in space. Rachel's eyes widened. It's pointing to another structure. Could it be another dome? The implications were staggering. If the coordinates led to another site, it might hold clues about the Valith, or even survivors. The crew exchanged glances, excitement mingling with apprehension. This was uncharted territory, both literally and figuratively. Greg stepped forward, his expression serious. If we follow this, we need to be prepared. We don't know what we'll find or who. Daniel nodded, determination etched on his face. We can't ignore this. Luma's leading us somewhere important. After a brief discussion, the decision was made. A small team, including Daniel, Laura, Rachel, and Greg, would embark on a mission to investigate the new location. Luma would accompany them, serving as both guide and ambassador. Preparations began immediately, with the crew gathering supplies and modifying their ship for the journey ahead. When the day of departure arrived, the atmosphere was a mix of anticipation and nostalgia. The facility staff gathered to see them off, offering words of encouragement and support. As the crew boarded the Explorer's Hope, Luma trotted confidently beside them, its glowing tail casting a soft light on the ramp. The journey through space was long, but filled with moments of wonder. Along the way, they marveled at distant stars, swirling nebulae, and planets bathed in ethereal light. Luma seemed especially fascinated, often pressing its nose against the viewport to get a better look. Its curiosity reminded the crew why they had chosen this path, to explore, to learn, and to connect. When they finally reached the coordinates, they found themselves facing another massive structure. Like the first dome, it shimmered with intricate designs and pulsed faintly with energy. As they approached, the entrance slid open, revealing a dark corridor illuminated by glowing patterns. Inside, the air felt different, charged with a sense of anticipation. Luma led the way, its glowing fur lighting their path. The walls were lined with holograms depicting scenes of Valith life. There were images of families, explorers, and cities brimming with activity. It was clear this civilization had once thrived, leaving behind a legacy of art, science, and culture. In the heart of the structure, they discovered something extraordinary, a chamber filled with stasis pods. Each pod contained a Valith preserved in suspended animation. Their luminous skin glowed faintly, as if alive beneath the surface. Among them stood a larger figure, its posture regal and commanding. Unlike the others, this individual was awake. The Valith turned to face them, its glowing eyes locking onto Luma. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then the creature spoke, not in clicks or whistles, but in a voice that resonated directly in their minds. "You have returned our child to us." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady despite the awe coursing through him. "We didn't know. We found Luma abandoned and brought it home. We've cared for it ever since." The Valith inclined its head, a gesture of gratitude. "Your actions honor us. You have shown kindness to one of our own, bridging worlds that were once strangers." Over the next few hours, the crew learned the truth about what had happened to the Valith. A catastrophic event had forced them to scatter across the galaxy, leaving their young in stasis chambers as a safeguard. Those who survived had dedicated their lives to searching for their lost children, preserving their legacy until the day they could reunite. Luma stayed close to the Valith leader, its glowing tail flickering brightly. It was clear the reunion meant everything to both sides. Yet when the time came to leave, Luma hesitated. It looked back at the crew, its luminous eyes filled with emotion. "You saved me," it seemed to say, its voice echoing softly in their minds. "Thank you." Tears welled up in Rachel's eyes as she knelt beside the little alien. "You saved us too," she whispered. "You showed us what's possible." With heavy hearts, the crew said goodbye to Luma, knowing it belonged with its own kind. As they departed, the Valith leader offered a final message. Your courage and compassion will not be forgotten. When the time comes, we will meet again. Back aboard the Explorer's Hope, the crew gazed out at the stars, each lost in their thoughts. Though Luma was gone, its impact lingered. They had started as ordinary explorers, but their journey had transformed them, and the world. Years later, Daniel and Laura reflected on their adventure. Humanity had grown because of Luma, embracing the idea that kindness and curiosity could unite even the most distant corners of the universe. And though they missed their alien friend, they knew it was out there somewhere, carrying the torch of hope among the stars. In the end, Luma had been more than just an abandoned puppy. It had been a teacher, a bridge, and a beacon of what the future could hold. Thanks to it, humanity had taken its first steps toward becoming part of something greater, a cosmic family bound by trust, love, and the endless possibilities of the universe.